Okay, so in this video, I would like to first introduce my beautiful friend, Kimberly Ann. Kimberly Ann, here she is, radiating of so much love and light. And today we're hopping on this video in service for all of you and us that are going through a spiritual awakening. We want to talk about what happens physically, actually in your body when the spiritual awakening starts. And are you really having a spiritual awakening, or are you going crazy? Who knows? So in today's little video and podcast here, we're going to talk from our own experience and how we have used our spiritual awakening to just move into our own life in a deeper, more rich way. We will also maybe bring in some techniques and how that has helped us along the way. So let me also introduce myself. So my name is Carolina Goldberg, and I have a little business that's called Carolina's Sacred Awakenings because it is a sacred moment when you awaken. And I, of course, teach Reiki classes, I teach yoga, I have workshops and meditation groups, and I love to play. So in whatever way I can be of service, and especially today, we're coming together and we are being of service. Maybe you are listening right now. Yes, talking to you that is listening right now, and you feel a little bit uneasy, or you're having like a lot of nervousness going on in your body and you don't understand where it's coming from. Maybe you are going through a spiritual awakening. So I warmly welcome you, the listener, and I warmly welcome Kimberly Ann.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. So, we met during the, that time, a long, long time ago when we all stayed home and we're always on the computers. We met through Unplug, where I was teaching a meditation class, including Reiki. And Reiki is a spiritual energy system that was founded or re-remembered, I like to say, by Dr. Uzui in Kyoto in Tokyo. It's a very great way of stabilizing your own subtle bodies. So when you might have a spiritual awakening, you at least know how to do hands positions. So we met like that, Kimberly Ann and I, and we were just hit it off right off the bat. And, I was always a yoga teacher and in the spiritual business and was never into the corporate world that much. Sometimes I wished I took that road, but I didn't. And Kimberly Ann, we found each other right in the middle because she was working or in the corporate world for, I think, for many years.
Yeah.
So why don't you introduce yourself and how you got in touch with, your spirituality and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it really started a little bit in 2017, but then in 2019, right before the pandemic happened, I actually had a very big spiritual awakening. And I guess I should call it also like a dark night of the soul because it wasn't pretty and it wasn't like blissful or anything yet, but on the other side it was. But so past trauma started to come up, and it was when I wanted, like, your soul starts to recognize these things and it starts making a choice of like, I don't want to do this anymore. Whatever those past traumas are bringing up, limiting beliefs, and um my nervous system really went out of whack from that because it was almost like experiencing PTSD, even though it's not happening, right? Even though it happened long ago. And um, so I met Carolina actually in 2020. And it was when I was exploring all of these holistic methods because my nervous system went really out of whack and my entire body like kind of shut down on me a little bit. mentally, emotionally, physically, even. I was nauseous all the time, like body ached all over. And I go to the doctor and they said, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. You're so healthy. And I'm like, but there is something wrong. And so I started doing a lot of meditation, and it really started to open up my third eye. And I was coming to conclusions of things that never would have come to me before. And like one meditation I had was like, oh my God, I am love. I am love. And that's all I am. And like, I would never have said that before. And like, what does that even mean, really? And it was when I took Carolina's meditation and she was doing Reiki, and I had never had Reiki done before on myself. And that was like the best I felt since I had been going through this spiritual awakening. And I was able to sleep really well that night. My nervous system really settled down, and it was like a godsend to me at that moment. And at the same time, she announced that she was going to be doing a Reiki training. And I emailed her literally right away and was like, I need this in my life because this is something, this is like amazing, whatever it is. And without even having done a session before, I like started to learn it myself. So it really was the spiritual awakening for me. And that dark night of the soul was really like having past traumas come to light and having the awareness to understand what those were trying to tell me, because they're trying to tell you something. And
That might
yeah,
be, what you're missing. Like you think that you're being punished or what happened to me? Why can I remember it? All of a sudden I have memories. Is this true? Am I going crazy? Things like that can come up, right? And it is really challenging because you are maybe never taught about what can actually happen in your body when you get thrown in to this. When your soul says, okay, it's time, then you're like, what? You don't even know what the soul is. You don't even know what your chakras are. You don't even know what your subtle body is. And you're just thrown into this mess and then going to the doctor. And the doctor saying, no, you're perfectly fine. Oh, you're so healthy. You're a young, beautiful girl having a perfect job, perfect life. And you're like, no, help. So that's kind of, do you know, Kimberly Ann, like, do you think it was just your soul that just said, okay, enough of this? Or was it, can you remember back? Because it's with the spiritual awakening, we don't know what happens unless you know what happens because you've been studying it and can expect it. But if you don't know it, when you have gone through it, you can reflect back and say, oh my God, that must have been it. This was must have been it. And then you can kind of understand that everything maybe was planned anyway by your higher self or something like that. But do you have any clue still on what might have triggered it for you?
oh yes, for sure.
Oh, you
Uh,
do? Okay. Well, let us know.
Um,
We're curious.
well, it was actually like a relationship, and
Oh, yeah.
it stirred something in me of, because I started to want to change the way I was behaving in relationships, and it started getting me thinking more. And then there was an event that happened within that relationship that triggered something that happened from childhood. And it was devastating, right? Like my dad wasn't around, so it was an abandonment wound. And something that this person did like triggered that abandonment wound. And it's not the first time that that has happened, but it was at the time that was the right time that I was ready and willing to face those scary things that we don't want to face.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. That is so profound. Now that I'm thinking back, I also had that same abandonment wound because my dad also left me and I had no idea what was going on. But let's talk about that because when you came to take my Reiki meditation class, you are actually looking for something A, B, but you were so open in a sense so that you could actually feel the Reiki energy because it takes a certain openness to actually A, face it and look for something, B, to feel and sense the energy, even though you don't quite understand how it works.
Yeah, and actually I think that's a good point is, it wasn't Reiki that like totally allowed the openness, right? It was before, because you do
Yeah.
need that openness. And I have always been kind of into astrology and crystals and whatnot, but I think it was meditation because it's allowing you to go inward and really like sit with yourself. That, and I was doing it every single day, which
Wow, that's profound.
I don't even do that as much anymore now that I'm like really open. But it also, I think I had a moment even before 2019 where I had a yearning for want, wanting to understand what purpose was. And I think that's part of it too, is like we know that there's something bigger out there. And whether you believe in, you practice a religion or you just believe in a higher power, and that kind of like allowed the openness as well of like believing that it's not just doesn't just start and end with me. There's like so much more.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, and we can really understand, when you go into the spiritual path, I think you can really embrace and understand that everything is so intricate. And it's always about that reflecting back that can understand, oh, that led to that. And you can really see how everything is woven together. Even people that you meet, all of a sudden, you meet somebody, and then you're like, oh, wow, we have had similar path. Or, I used to live in Italy, and I would go like to Paris, or I would go like to London, and I would like see the same people. I was thinking, why it's the same, 8, 10 people. I'm keep seeing them in these different weird places, and somebody always knows somebody. So I think that when you look back at those things, at those situations, then you can almost like, wow, it's so profound, it's so intricate, and it's so divinely planned. And that's like a very simple way of expressing it, because it's super complicated and complex. The awakening process, who you meet, who is your teacher, who are your guides, in real life. And then, of course, we have so many layers within us as a human being. We're certainly not just the body, but we have all the different layers and all the chakras and all the auras and all the dimensions that we're holding here in this physical body avatar. But we have the body in which we get to play and experience this whole spiritual awakening in. And today, we kind of hopped on because we could see, or I can see, and you probably can see, that there's a lot of people like are waking up and having similar experiences that Kimberly Ann went through with this wake up kind of a call. Personally, I was searching for my whole life, and I was like, what am I doing here on this planet? Where are my parents? What, I was always questioning everything and reading, doing exploration, traveling, just trying to get out of where I was. I actually had so much energy when I was really in my teenage 16, 17, 13, that I would go running. I just had to run like for miles and miles. I used to run like 6 miles every day just to kind of like be able to think. I was like, I didn't know what to do with myself. But then I traveled and lived abroad for a long time. But when I finally found yoga, I was like, wow, I have a body. That was kind of my spiritual awakening. Wait, I have a body? And I would get so mad at my teacher because like I feel fantastic when I'm doing yoga and when I'm done with yoga. But then when I had to step into the world, I got like so nervous again. I would like actually drink like 3, 4 cups of coffee, just down it so that I could be used to my nervousness again. So that's what's my nervous system probably reacting, and drinking coffee, which would be like the opposite effect, actually in somehow made me feel more normal. So imagine how my head used to be.
Well, it is. The spiritual awakening is kind of this ups and downs moment, right? Because it's not always like the dark night of the soul, right? The scary part, facing the shadows. It's not all just that. Because once you do start to have the realizations and you become aware, and you are making different choices because you're like, oh, this is what this is doing, and I want to respond in this way now. There's so much love and compassion and like realizations that come with it as well, of just like, and it's all coming back to the remembrance of who you are, and we are not just this body. Like, we have a body, but we're
Yeah.
like so much more, and we're so interwoven and connected, like you were saying, of like with the rest of the world and the earth and the people and the animals, and it can be quite beautiful as well. But the initial starts is like a little rocky.
Little rocky. So what happens is when we start to wake up spiritually, there are actually new energies that are moving through our bodies, and they're called Kundalini energies. And it's not like the sexual Kundalini thing, but it does move through the three main dantian. And the dantian is three parts of your body that they're called different in different systems, but the lower dantian is, of course, the creative and the will energy and the action energy and the more of a sexual energy. So it starts there, and it's actually very natural because it starts when we start to develop sexually. So we test out things and this and that worked and that was disaster, but we kind of figure out what it is that we want and how it works. And I grew up in Sweden, but there was never like nobody ever spoke about anything in this sense at all. There was like taboo almost to talk about it, and you just saw what other people did, and you're like, oh, that doesn't look fun. And usually, what they did in Sweden was to get blasted drunk and then just make out with some people, and that's kind of what they did there. I was like, I'm not sure about that. Um, then it moves up into the heart center, and we were heartbroken. How can we guide the energy in our heart of feeling and then directing our emotions? Look, there's cutie patootie kitty cat in the window. And then it goes up into our mind. How can we correct and use the energy of thinking and intention? And then these three energy centers, the three dantian, start to wake up and align themselves and clean out and clear out, patterns, trauma. And remember that we are holding memories, not just our own memories, but we're holding memories through the lineage. So something that your parents and your parents' parents and their parents never processed and got rid of, it actually gets passed down into our cells when we get out through the birth canal. So we come in here as these divine beings. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then like boom, this stuff hits you hard. And then of course whatever happens when we grow up, and there is supposed to be trauma, there is supposed to be disappointment. It's nobody's fault. It's kind of like I think we chose it here in Earth School, so we then can start to unpack it. And then if you're somebody that's always been interested in spirituality, or like Kimberly Ann said, crystals and meditation and whatnot, we have most likely made an agreement that we're going to clean up the lineages, both from the father's and the mother's side. So past, present, future, parallel lives, and just kind of get that out of the way. And then we can start to work on our own stuff. It takes time. I've been practicing pretty much daily for 25 years, except for 6 months after I got back from India. I couldn't step on the yoga mat. I was like, yoga, oh no. I don't know what happened to me there. I'm still unpacking that. So we call that integration in the spiritual, so to say, energy language. But awakening happens as we go through the changes of life. So the first one would be like, the terrible I don't know what that is, 5 or 3 or 2, so whatever that is. And then it goes through the puberty, I think. And then, of course, it goes when we have the full Saturn return around 29 years of age. And then, you know, all of a sudden you're blossoming into one family, one work, it's, and then all what the society is telling us, oh, you have to have a great job, you have to have a career, you can't do yoga. My parents were like, when are you ever going to grow up? My father's professor of economics and his wife, they're like, she's so weird. What is she doing? And my mother grew up in the theater, and I was just like, who am I? Was completely opposite. And so I ended up becoming a yoga instructor, which I always thought was really bad. And I always felt bad about it because it wasn't like, what the parents expected. So, but it wasn't bad. It has been really good because I've served myself and I've served all of my students. Really, I've always taught from love, and one thing leads to another. So the yoga led me into Reiki, led me into the shamanistic trainings, led me into many spiritual awakenings and the whole bit. But let's talk more a little bit about what our purpose is and what can happen in the physical body when we go through something that's called the dark night of the soul that Kimberly Ann was explaining. And sometimes you have to go through the bad so that you know that that's not what I want anymore. So you have to push through that threshold and say, when I did that, that did not feel good. How can I now go through and choose a higher vibrational living? Do you want to talk a little bit about that in somehow so we
Yeah.
can be helpful?
Yeah, and I think too, sometimes as humans, we don't want to face the darkness, right? So we'll suppress it as long as we can. And then spirit, our guides, our higher self, or whatever, will step in a little bit, divine intervention, and will kind of give us something that's hard to push us to make a different choice. And so I think in some cases that's what I did, right? Because like those things have came up in the past, but at the time I didn't choose to deal with them at that time. And then it was something that I really like, it was affecting my whole entire physical body. And so I really needed to make sure that I like, it was the push I needed to make that choice of like, okay, enough is enough. I really need to figure this out. Um, but yeah, I mean, the physical body, it's so crazy how certain things can affect the physical body. So like we store trauma in our body, right? And that's why actually talk therapy was amazing for a while because it got me to learn how to express and like become aware, but it didn't take it from my actual physical body. And I actually think that's what Reiki did is like, it takes it like when you get the trigger, like, and you'll know because it'll happen repeatedly when the trigger happens, is where do you feel it in your body? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your solar plexus? Like, and since the chakras all relate to something different, it kind of gives you that clue, which is why it's helpful to know what the chakras mean. It gives you that clue on like where is it that that limiting belief is, and where does the healing need to take place, and where can you remove that stored trauma within your body. So that's just like one of the ways that it can manifest in the body, but obviously there's lots of different things.
And I love that also the fact that just having a basic understanding about the chakra systems can then teach you, okay, we can even go over them now since we're doing this in service of somebody that might feel traumatized or going through some energies and they have no idea where that's coming from. So the root chakra, of course, has to do with being grounded and accepted in who you are in this life. It has to do with safety and feeling that you belong and that you are loved. And, when your parents run away without explaining why, you're thinking, well, I'm not loved. They left. So that can be really tough. I remember even when my dad moved out, I think I was 5 or 6, and I was just the I remember the mom in in the summer house area. She was like, "Where's your dad?" And I was like, I didn't know. I just knew that he went to America. So I said, "Well, yeah, he's a cowboy and an Indian in America," and because I've seen those movies on TV. I didn't know, so I made it up and I made a whole story, and I thought it was almost true. And she was laughing and laughing, and I was like kind of offended that she was even laughing. But how did you experience your root chakra?
Yeah. Well, it is you feel a lack of safety, right? And I felt that. And actually I think something that, because I tend to feel things a lot in my body, is when my root chakra is off and when I'm ungrounded, the way my body feels is, well, one, anxiety comes up a lot because you're like kind of just like all over the place. Your energy is not rooted and grounded into the earth. And then I get nauseous for whatever reason whenever I feel ungrounded, a lot of nausea. And I think it is because you're a little wobbly. You're not
Like on
like,
a boat, not stable
yeah.
ground, right?
And
Yeah.
yeah, is a general feeling of just like unsafe. Like I'm not safe.
And I remember that too when I came to yoga and I was like, oh wow, I even have a body. I don't think I was ever in my body.
Yes. Yeah, you feel kind of not in your own body.
Mhm. Great. And then the second chakra is the chakra of creativity and sexuality. Oh my. Okay. And, that was also interesting to go through and to find. I was always, for example, well, I had one boyfriend that I was so in love with when I was young, and he cheated on me because I didn't like to, have sexual stuff. I was like, no, it's gross. I wasn't at all mature. I wasn't ready at all. So of course that happened, but it broke my heart so much. So actually, no, we're getting a little personal here, but after I had like my first child, then I was like, really like, oh wow, I get it now. It took me that long. And she's already 23, so it was a long time ago. But and it also have to do with creativity. Are you okay what you're creating here in the world? Or are you always second guessing yourself, like, oh, am I good enough? Maybe that also has to do with the second chakra. How do you feel about that, Kimberly?
Yeah. Well, I think, and I struggled a lot with this as well, as it's that creation, right? And if you think about where that sacral chakra is, it is where the womb is. And like you do actually literally create with your womb and you grow like another human being. And so, but I mean, it's not just for that, right? It's like, what are your creations in life of just, creativity? It could be a lot of things. It could be dance, it could be self-expression, it can be painting, or it doesn't have to be art, right? It can just be anything. How do you create with
We are
just
doing now and how we're talking to
exactly?
each other. Are
Yeah.
we are we cool with being in the flow? Because it
Hmm.
also has to do with the watery energy.
Yes. Yes. And like that chakra can be off when you are resisting flow, right? And that was me for a long time. We want to control and we want to, and that creates resistance against the natural flow of universe, as opposed to just being open to like whatever might come and being okay with whatever might come and trusting in
Yeah,
the
and then also if you have um, sexual trauma and stuff like that, which can be it's really common and it's really confusing. And it can also, become addictions for whatever sexual outlet. And, when you're awakening your second chakra, yeah, you try this and that, and, maybe nothing really works, or maybe it overworks, who knows? But it's good to talk about it and like really see, what am I creating here in life in general? Am I doing it just for my own self? Or am I really doing it to share openly so other people also can, connect openly? Because when we are open in a certain way, then other people can also relax into themselves and understand that whatever and whatever and whoever we are it can be very, very wonderful. We all are needed and we're all so unique. And, that took me many years to even accept. I was like, oh my God, why am I so different? Shit, I want to be like they are. And I was never, of course. So, okay. And then the third chakra is the solar plexus. It's like our personality. How can we shine that light of who we are? And what does that look like if you're open or if you're too open or if it's constrained? Do you always want to speak the most? You know? How do you feel in
Well, okay, so the solar plexus is actually one that I had to heal a lot as it relates to relationships. And it's about self-esteem and self-worth, right? And even related to work. Like, I remember one time my boss gave me a promotion and I kind of didn't want it because I didn't feel like I deserved it. And she talked to me, she was like, "Why do you seem like you don't want this?" And I was like, "I do. I don't know. It was weird." And so, and like even with relationships, right? Like somebody rejects you, right? You feel that in, of like, oh, rejection, like self-esteem, like I'm not worthy. And it all stems from the abandonment wound, right? Because and that's where like certain wounds can affect several chakras, right? And so that one definitely is like shining your light, right? Like having the courage and the confidence and being able to digest what's actually happening too. So it's like related to your digestion. And I had bad digestion for a long time because it was like hard for me to digest what was actually happening in all these different situations. And so yeah, but I think when
that
you're
too?
shining it light, yeah, you feel courage, you feel confident, you feel
Hmm.
all those
Right.
things.
Yay. And then the heart chakra, of course. So the heart, it's so powerful. It's most potent energy field in our whole body. It creates the toric field around us. Heart is about love. Of course, it's also about self-remembrance. And what does that mean? It's like remember and be present for who you are. Some times or many times a lot of people kind of sleepwalking in their life, and I used to do that too, and I used to really wanted to be distracted so I didn't have to look at my own heart. And how could you then open that up? Well, even in yoga, for example, back bending, I was leading a detox workshop, I remember, and I did a couple of big back bends, and I just fell in panic onto the floor. And I opened my heart chakra so much that I panicked and I had like an anxiety and fear attack. I felt so much fear. And when you feel that, and then that was definitely a big step into my spiritual awakening. And then trying to cover that up, not being able to show your emotions, and then shame on top of that. And it was quite dramatic, and I remember it, of course, till this day, because it was such a turning point. It's like, oh shit, this is what it's about. It's like really to be able to receive love. Giving has always been easy for me because I've always been a giver, but really receive love and get that. That was a big, and I'm still working on that today.
Yeah, and the receiving of love not only from others but from yourself, which is like
Ah,
a big
yeah.
one, right? The compassion and love for yourself, which I've actually found as I have more compassion and love for myself, I have so much more compassion and love for others because it's coming from like an understanding, right, of we are not always what we're putting out into the world, if it's negative, right? That's not, and somebody else that's doing something to you, it's coming from a place of a wound. And when you can like see that and be aware of that, you can hold so much more compassion for people. But yeah, the heart has been fun for me because it's been a roller coaster of emotions and good things too, right? Like you could feel so much love when you're having a heart opening that it's like, I remember one time, and we always laugh about this, is I went out to the beach after we did some meditation. I don't know. It was a hard opening. And I saw a seagull yawn, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just love that seagull. And because you can see yourself in all these living beings, and even like there was bark on a tree, and and it was exposing some of the inside of the tree because it was coming off. And I just had so much love and appreciation. So that's where the beauty comes of like when you do have a heart opening, right? It's like you just have a lot of love and compassion for all living things.
Everything and everyone.
Everyone.
Even like, the bad people or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, oh, they're so wounded. And you're like, oh, you just want to love on them. I mean, it's nuts. Heart openers are a trip, but it's the best one in the whole world. And yeah, and when we start to work with the heart and this self-observation, um, and self-remembering, you could see how can you stay open in your heart, right? When do you feel like, oh, I gotta shut down here a little bit so I won't get stabbed again? But eventually, as we practice and meditate and do yoga and, become aware of where am I, how aware and how open can I stay during the day? How can you see yourself with those loving, kind eyes throughout the day? When we're driving, put on the podcast, and then all of a sudden we're there. We're like, oh my God, how did I even get here? Then you've gone somewhere else and you're in this hypnotized space and state. So when we start to open our heart, we become more aware and more alert and more present, because our heart center and our heart mind is actually the creative center of who we actually are. And if you're ever feeling in a nervous situation, or your nervous system is freaking out, or you are going through a spiritual awakening of having a panic attack, don't try to calm your heart. Just like observe yourself, like from a distance. Oh, my body, oh wow, it's having a panic attack, or your heart is crushed. Feel the emotions, but don't get so stuck in it, in a sense, as well. So yeah, then we move into our throat chakra, which is really powerful chakra that really connects the heart and the mind. And everything is a vibration. We are vibrating. Our whole body is vibrating. And when we speak like this, we're just sharing, hopefully from that heart space or that heart mind, sharing of who we are. And the throat chakra has also to do with listening. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel it's also like so connected to our authenticity because like you said, like it's connecting the heart and the mind, right? So it's like how do we express our own authenticity of like who we actually are? Like it's coming from the heart, but it's coming out of our mouths. And like it's a vibration, a frequency um that hopefully is coming from the heart. Doesn't always, but
I know, but that's okay.
yes, no, that's where the
But,
practice
you
comes in.
know, oh my God, I was so naughty the other day. I was not from my heart, and
You naughty.
it was so crazy. I haven't even told anyone. I'm just remembering right now, maybe for this situation. So I have found something that I think is so much fun, and it's like Zumba. So I go to the Zumba dance class, and I love the girls there. They're like all like Filipino, the ladies Filipino, and they are so fun and so loving. And I'm like, two heads over them, but I just feel such connection to them. And I'm like usually in the second or third row, but and then sometimes I don't know what it was, but I was just being so how does it say? I was feeling really reactive towards this one woman that was probably, I don't even know why, but she was like standing right in front of me, and she was like, all I could think is like she was like a big box, and she wasn't big or anything like that, but her energy was just like so. I own this space. Don't come close. And I was like, oh my God. And she was out of tempo and and I was like, oh my God, how can I kind of get to the side of her so she's not like right in front of me? And I was just like not having it. And I actually, like when she was backing up, I actually stopped. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. And I didn't move my foot. So she kind of tripped a little bit on my foot. And I was like, oh, sorry. And I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? It was like I was like freaking 12. I've never done that in so long. Intentionally, but not intentionally to hurt her. But I was just like, woman, you're in my space. And she was probably feeling exactly the same thing. And then after, of course, we are like, okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah. I was like thinking, oh my God, what did I just do? Am I crazy? Anyway, okay, so I was admitting that now for everybody who's listening. So we all have that
Oh, of
little
course.
side in us, and that's fine. We are
Well,
not
I also feel like,
perfect.
yeah, and I feel like those things are meant to come up for us, right? And
Yeah.
like you said, you're like, oh, I wanted my own space, but she probably felt the same way too, right? It's like it's a reflection. And
It
so
was a reflection of my face. Yeah. That's usually what happens. Whenever somebody's bugging us or we're judging somebody, which I was judging her. And, I really have to admit that. But it was a freaking good lesson. And I'm thinking,
yeah.
I'm going to do something about it. And I think, oh my God, am I crazy? And then I did it anyway. I was thinking, oh my God, am I crazy? And I was like, oh, it kind of felt good. And she wasn't hurt. She just like stepped a little bit on my foot. So it was innocent, but it wasn't from the heart.
Right.
It
And
was
that's where the ego mind comes in,
my
right?
ego. It was
Like
from
where
my
you
ego.
leading from there or
Yeah,
leading
so
from
I have to thank that lady for being this big stuck energy that I did not like in myself. So, all right, enough about that. But it's okay if we do it. And I like, I'm sorry. Then we can do the Ho'oponopono. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Go ahead.
But that's a good point because it like awakening doesn't mean that like you're done with your patterns, right? They come up and it's like they come up, but like they don't always have to take over your life. Like and they will take bleh, how do you say that? They will take over less of your life as, you become more aware,
Yeah. And
right?
that
Like
is
you're
also,
very aware of it like pretty quickly. So it's like it's not something that you'll continue to stew on and be like, "Oh my gosh."
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she won't haunt you the rest of the week.
No, I hope not. I don't even remember what she looked like. So it was so in my head. It
Yeah.
was so in my head. She just like triggered something that had to be seen. And that's also the great thing about being on the spiritual path. It's never over. As long as you have a body, you're being presented with these situations that you can master or fail. But as long as you're aware of it and you don't hurt anyone, you are all right. But the moment you think that you're like, oh, I'm so perfect, then you are really wrong. You might as well go pull something old over your head and begin anew. So this is a little tricky business here.
Well, that's perfect transition to the third eye.
Mm.
Awareness.
Awareness, exactly. So let's speak about your awareness because I know you're so open now in your
Yeah.
awareness.
Well, the third eyes relates to our like intuition, right? And I think one of the things that we learned in early on in Reiki was like, where's your flashlight going? And like you think of your flashlight as your third eye, and it's where is it shining a light on? And so for like examples of like when people come into our awareness and they trigger us, it's like, is your where's your awareness going? Is it going to, you know, what is it bringing up in you? And that's the thing to like focus on. It's less about the, the judging, right? And all that kind of stuff. It's like more of like, what is it bringing up within you? And then as you start to notice what's bringing up within you, it's like, then you can start to notice a lot of the unseen. And I think that a lot of that with like Reiki is like the just energy in general. Like, how does that energy make me feel? Or whether it's like outside of you or within you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a really good point. Yeah, that was a brilliant exercise, by the way. So imagine if you had a flashlight. What are you putting your energy to, right? So my naughty example. So I was putting all my energy into that one person that was like just in my way. Well, okay, so I actually gave her my energy, right? Then you take the flashlight and you flash it back on yourself and you say, okay, what was that lady reflecting in me? Well, that she was kind of stuck, or there was something within me that didn't want to move, or that there was some ego issue there. So you just keep looking, and then you say, oh wow, I realized that. The good thing is that when you bring these hidden aspects of yourself up into conscious awareness and you see them when you put the flashlight in your own self, then you can finally let it go. And these can be patterns that are million years old, or they will repeat in different scenarios over and over and over again until you actually take a look at it and acknowledge it and then forgive it away. So if you want to become self-remembering or practice self-awareness, imagine your flashlight. Where are you putting your energy? Wherever you're putting your attention is where your energy goes. And then if it's something that's wonderful or upsetting, look inside and just really start to process it. And then finally, we have the 1,000-petal lotus, where we open up to receive messages from our higher self, our soul self, our I am presence. And when you allow for I am presence to really enter into your body, enter into every cell of your body, then we become more of the light. We become more at one. We become more woke or awakened within ourselves, because the more of the divine self that enter into the physical realm, and as we have consciousness and awareness of that, we begin that sacred awakening that is about going through these patterns of realization. So crown chakra is huge, and I sometimes feel like I'm always so open in my crown. I'm always like, oh, I'm always thinking galactic. When my husband is, saying something, well, this and this and this, and I was like, oh, if you think about the highest and the greatest, and he's like, I'm talking about physical things and like tangible things. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah, tangible things. So you don't want to be too much of an airhead, right? You want to have all of the elements within your body aligned, even, so that you can be out there, but anchor it and manifest it into your own physical body. What do you want to share about your crown chakra?
Yeah, I mean, I find that we have more control over how open we want our crown chakra to be than we think. And I've had experiences where, like, I have like really highly energetic experiences, and I'm so open and I'm having all this information flow in. But then it's time to go to bed and I can't go to sleep because my crown chakra is so open. And so I find sometimes that's a result of I get insomnia if like it's too open. And so I do
That's
think that,
good. That's good. Did you guys
yeah,
hear that? If you can't sleep, you're probably too open or too stuck in your head. So you can
yes.
like pull it back in.
Yeah. And actually I think when you're having a spiritual awakening, you are getting more access to information, right? So it is important to recognize when you're experiencing those moments of like, I'm too open right now. I might need my body needs a little rest. Let's tone it down a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, that part for me, this is where my yoga practice comes in, because that will automatically, for me, really bring me into my body. It aligns and opens the energy fields and the structures within me, on me, and about me. And I have that practice for a reason, because otherwise I'll be like, hello, So it helps me bring it all in and make it real in the body. So we have the body so that we can play in this matrix, in this world, in this experience. And we are in this matrix, this Mother Earth energy, but it doesn't mean that we have to believe also everything that happens. Like we can, just like the Lady de Guadalupe says, don't take life so seriously. And that's another thing when we are really in a spiritual awakening, things can feel like crazy, like, oh my God, like we are very dramatic when we're in that sense, and we really believe it's true, and it's hard to get into our body, or it's hard to get centered again. So just know, if you are going through it, please just reach out to us, find a group or something, or read a book, or know that it will too pass. It shall too pass. And we are really in the world, but not always of it. We can play in the matrix, but not always believe it. So it's a fine line, and it's ever evolving, and we're on continuing deepening. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think community is important when you're going through a spiritual awakening, because you can find resonance with what other people are going through, and then you start to realize, oh, I'm not going crazy. Like this, and the validation that you're getting from other people of like, oh yeah, I experienced that too. And like this helped me, and just like being able to have that safe space to share about this stuff, because I think we talked about this earlier, where it's like, it's not totally mainstream. Like, society has programmed us to be like, okay, like this is what you do, this is how you live, this is right and wrong. And, this is stepping out of the society norms, right? And you start to think like, this, what's going on? What's happening? Why I don't belong anymore, right? Like, and but actually it's all for the highest good of you and the highest good of all, to
Yeah.
kind of come to these realizations.
Yeah. Well, this is just putting it, I think it's a perfect perspective that um, you might like really start to awaken now all of a sudden. And as the, world is changing rapidly, we are moving into new earth, and, we're moving out of the Kali Yuga, and we are starting to receive more spiritual light, more, codes from the solar flares, etc. Spirituality is physical. Spirituality is physical. It is in your body, and it can manifest, like we said, through nervous energy, pains, aches. I have had, since I was a young child, kidney things going on, and I had kidney surgery when I was very young. I even remember, when I was in Italy and when I came here in surgical school, I had like, oh, kidney infections. It was like somebody was stabbing me in my back. But since I've gone through my spiritual work and yoga and the whole bit, I don't get it anymore. It's like I graduated from that, and I am less fearful. I am more trusting, and I am, finding my own voice and my own space. So as we face ourselves and whatever it is that is kind of your storyline or your pain line, your emotional line, your physical, uh, you know, energies, um, that is also spiritual, right? So when we get this awakening, and I would love to teach more about that, It's called a Shaktipata or Shaktipat. That is a natural initiation of your spiritual longing and how that can come. And if you're not facing it, something most likely will start to trigger it and bring it on for you physically, because when we have pain, we will seek help. And even if the doctor is saying, no, it's nothing wrong with you, you're perfect, you're just a beautiful young lady that is so great and successful. But you're like, but, you know. So I hope this was helpful. I had a blast. Did you have
Of
fun?
course, I love talking about all of this stuff all the time.
Yeah, we can talk about it all day long. It is like 24/7 of our dialogue, inner
Mhm.
or outer. And yeah, so thank you so much for tapping in and tuning in. And just wanted to send you, who are the listeners, so much gratitude for tuning in. And please let us know in the comments if this was helpful for you and if you want to go deeper and do more of these, because I do. Do you?
Yes, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, Carolina, for having me.
Thank you, Kimberly Ann. Do you want to close?
Just sending love and light to anyone and everyone that's watching. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye bye.